In the Middle Ages, punishments painted tales of horror. Nobles schemed in echoing dungeons, devising brutal torment. Serfs were chained to social system, and witchcraft was blamed for burning things. Cathedrals held both solace and judgment. Plagues reaped lives, Black Death's relentless toll. Scholars hung silenced. Knowledge entombed, compassion amid cruelty. Methods of anguish whispered? How did society live through such torment? What is justice if justice in itself was injustice? Social discrimination. In this harsh landscape, punishments were not bounded equitably. A stark divide existed between social classes, with the lower echelons, such as peasants and serfs, bearing the brunt of the cruelty. Their lives were fraught with frequent and prominent punishments, leaving them in a perpetual state of vulnerability. The upper echelons of society, on the other hand, enjoyed a semblance of protection, their punishments remaining less known and comparatively lenient. At the heart of this grim scene were the unsettling ordeals, a twisted version of justice. These ordeals took different forms, each more chilling than the last. Enduring scorching iron in the ordeal by fire, facing drowning in the ordeal by water, undergoing trials of guilt or innocence through supernatural tests in trial by ordeal, and engaging in violent combat, where gods supposedly chose the winner in the ordeal by combat. Being homeless was a crime. Even the simple act of homelessness, a plight that could befall anyone, was criminalized. Those without a roof over their heads were consigned to stocks when they were subjected to public humiliation and physical abuse. This degrading treatment was not limited to the homeless. Discrimination ran rampant, particularly against the impoverished. The grim cycle of agony perpetuated itself, preying upon the weakest in society. In a cruel irony, the very act of survival led many down the treacherous path of crime. When desperation gnawed at their family's well-being, the choices were stark: plunge into debt or risk everything by committing a crime. Courts wasn't justice. In the shadows of this merciless world, courts and judges did exist, a thin veil of justice, however, tainted by bias and corruption. Verdicts were often preordained, rendering the proceedings a cruel masquerade. Those who dared to defy the summons of the court found themselves branded as outlaws, their possessions seized by the crown. Faced with such dire circumstances, outlaws banded together, roaming the countryside and resorting to a life of crime, fueled by desperation and a gnawing hunger for survival. Discrimination. The legal landscape of Middle England was eerily reminiscent of Roman and Greek law, which reserved torture exclusively for slaves. Yet, as time wore on, the boundaries shifted, and even free men found themselves subjected to the horrors of torture and imprisonment. The Middle Ages emerged as a chapter in history marked by its dark and twisted approach to punishment and justice. The existence of torture machines, ordeals, and discriminatory practices against the marginalized and impoverished paint a grim tableau of a society where agony and fear reigned supreme. The pursuit of survival drove countless into the clutches of crime, perpetuating a cycle of suffering that seemed ceaseless. As we reflect upon this haunting period, it served as a stark reminder of the importance of a just and equitable legal system, one that upholds the principles of fairness and empathy for all, irrespective of their social standing or circumstance. No freedom of religion. In the Middle Ages, there existed a realm where religious orthodoxy was sacrosanct, and any deviation from the beliefs of the church was met with unrelenting condemnation. Blasphemy and heresy, deemed the gravest offenses, struck at the very core of societal norms and religious dogma. These transgressions were not merely crimes, they were affronts to the divine order, and their perpetrators faced dire consequences, often culminating in the ultimate penalty: death. The horrors extended beyond hangings. Those convicted of rape, robbery, or manslaughter faced a chilling fate, being hanged in a cage for a slow and agonizing death witnessed by all. This grisly display wasn't limited to the scaffold. At times, the condemned were spared hanging only to endure torturous quartering, prolonging their suffering until the end. Orchestrated by the king's enforcers, these eerie public hangings drew crowds, including families with children, as rulers aimed to instill fear and deter wrongdoing. The public gained a disturbingly intimate insight into these punishments. Middle society, rife with its own limitations, struggled to provide suitable facilities for the accused. Lack of resources and funding often led to incarcerated individuals perishing from sickness before they could even stand trial. A harsh irony emerged as public empathy for those languishing in abysmal conditions led to a peculiar form of mercy, releasing prisoners to beg for sustenance, a grim reminder of the stark reality that befell those in the clutches of a merciless system. The Catholic confession tactic. The Catholic Church, wielding immense influence, employed torture as a means to extract confessions regardless of the veracity of the claims. The severity of the crime mirrored the brutality of the punishment, from beatings and whippings to the unspeakable horrors of being burned alive or suffocated in water. The Church's arsenal of torment knew no bounds, and every form of pain imaginable was unleashed upon the accused. These agonizing methods were a cruel dance of agony and torment, from the scalding of flesh with red-hot pincers to the grotesque stretching on the rack, a twisted ballet of suffering. Torture machines. Among the most chilling instruments of torment were the torture machines, devised with a sadistic ingenuity that defies comprehension. The breast ripper, a weapon designed to punish women accused of adultery and abortion, inflicted unspeakable horrors upon its victims. Its heated claws, like ravenous beasts, would slowly tear asunder the delicate flesh of the accused's breasts, leaving them disfigured and forever marked by the horrors they endured. The Spanish boot, a grim contraption, mercilessly crushed the foot, an act of agony exacerbated by the calculated preservation of the toes, destined to bear the brunt of further torment.